Fearless, resilient, diverse. This is Rochester. A city, a people, welcoming and driving change. Our culture of adaptability and innovation makes Rochester truly different. These traits were the foundation of our city's creation and are the center of its continued rebirth. And it's why Rochester is a great investment. We are the city of visionaries and leaders like Frederick Douglass, Susan B. Anthony, George Eastman, and Joseph C. Wilson. Rochester's culture of innovation and risk-taking won wars, invented industries, and without a doubt, completely changed the future of our nation. Our story is also your story. Rochester continues to be the city of innovators and strivers. You saw opportunities, created a vision, and worked tirelessly to make it reality. Our city embraces your vision. We're grateful for the risk you are taking, and we share your faith in our community. I know that together, our city will reach even higher, and that together, we'll build a better, stronger Rochester. Good afternoon, everyone. Are you excited to be here? Yes. Are you excited to be here? Yes. We're excited to have you here and to have this presentation. We want to thank our partners, CPC, for their sponsorship of this event. Let's please give them a big round of applause. As you can see, we have a lot of great things going on in the city of Rochester. In fact, there has never been a better time to invest in our city, and that's why we've invited you all here. Our downtown is taking off, home to new residents and businesses every day. We're planning to spend $500 million over the next 10 years to revitalize our waterfront along the Genesee River. We call that rocking the riverway. And soon we'll be making unprecedented levels of investment in long overlooked corridors like Bull's Head, Hudson Avenue, North Clinton Avenue, and East Main Street. And guiding it all, we are about to unveil our Rochester 2034 Comprehensive Plan, a 15-year vision for the future driven by data and community input. At this point in time, I would like to thank all of our City of Rochester employees that have done not only a great job of putting this event together, working on a comprehensive plan, but do a great job every day on behalf of the citizens of Rochester. Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you. Rochester is poised for greatness, and as landlords and small developers, you are a key partner in our success. That is why we are holding this summit today. My administration recognizes that expanding opportunities for our residents to access safe, quality, and affordable housing is fundamental to achieving our goal of creating safer, more vibrant neighborhoods. We also recognize that landlords and developers are some of the most important entrepreneurs and job creators in our community. We count on you every day to help create and maintain our housing stock. Despite what some may think, these two goals are not in conflict. They actually complement one another. The role you play in making our community stronger is overlooked far too often. Sometimes we focus on the big players and the flashy projects, forgetting about our smaller players. But the fact is, the overwhelming majority of landlords and developers are small local entrepreneurs who care deeply about our community and its success, which is why you have chosen to invest in our city, not someplace else. I want you to know we here at City Hall see you as an important ally in our efforts to make Rochester a better place for all of our citizens. And that's on behalf of myself and also City Council. We have City Council Member Willie Joe Lightfoot here, as well as City Council Member Mike Patterson. We are counting on you to maintain the highest standards as you manage your properties and that your investments have positive impact on our renters and our neighborhoods. Today, our partners in government, friends in the private sector, and my team at City Hall are here with the wealth of resources available to help you make good business decisions, improve your properties, and ensure compliance with local regulations. Our staff and team stands ready to work with you and build relationships that can further our collective goals. I want to thank our teams in the Office of Innovation, Department of Neighborhood and Business Development for organizing this summit. I also, again, want to thank our community partners who are here with us today, Community Preservation Corporation, who is helping to sponsor this event, but mostly I want to thank all of you for being here. When we put this out, we originally thought 80 people would show up. We had over 600 people that reserved a seat at this event. We decided that we wanted to have 2 events so that people could get the one-on-one information that they deserve, and we're going to be doing this presentation. So we shrunk it down for 300, and then we'll have another event for the other 300. But we recognize that we could be doing more in the city to help you, and that's why we're here today. And as we think about the agenda in store that is coming, we want to make sure that your investment in coming here today is well worth it. And before I bring up our Neighborhood and Business Development Commissioner, Baya Muhammad, to the podium to tell you more about what's in store for today, I want to take a moment to just really tell you how much we appreciate your investment in our city. We look at our neighborhoods as the lifeblood of our community. The downtown is the center. But a city cannot thrive unless we truly invest in our neighborhoods and our commercial corridors. And over the past year, not only working with the comprehensive plan, but we have a housing study, we have a comprehensive commercial corridor study that we want to get done on behalf of our citizens. We are moving forward, but we recognize that we cannot do that alone. We need each and every one of you who are interested in investing in our community to invest. We need to be supportive of your ideas, and we need to make sure that we bring your idea from point A to point B into reality. The city is here to assist in doing that. And we thank you for wanting to be a part of this discussion, but we don't necessarily do it alone in government as a city. We also have state partners that are here as well. I want to recognize Lenny Skrill from the Governor's Office, the Department of Housing and Community Renewal. And Lenny will be presenting to you a little bit later, but this is what this is all about. We thank you all for coming today, and I truly hope that you gain some insight, some knowledge, but most of all, that you take advantage of what you're hearing today, because I know that by making these investments in our community, by working hand in hand and in partnership, we can make Rochester a place that everyone, and I mean everyone, is proud to call home. Thank you all for coming. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce the Commissioner of Neighborhood and Business Development, Baya Muhammad.
Thank you. Let's give the mayor another round of applause. So we're going to keep this moving because this is just not about speeches today. This is about making sure information gets to you so you can use it. I'd like to take some time real quick to just thank our staff at the city for putting this on. Eitan, he's always gonna be in the background, but he played a big role in putting this together, and Henry, and all the staff at MBD, and I see some staff from the Deputy Mayor's office and also our Chief of Staff. Let's give them a round of applause. You know, one of my goals when I took this post was to make sure that we put more information out there in the street. So we've had several workshops with the goal of making sure that you know exactly what to do. One of the things that I heard from city council members and you was City Hall was just closed door and you don't share information. Well, that's why we're here, to change that. Not only to get you the information and make sure that you're able to use the information, because quite frankly, working with government and working with funders can be complicated. We all know that it's not a simple task. Going through zoning, getting loans, working through our antiquated processes, it can be very, very hard. Do you agree? Okay. Well, that's why we're here. That's why we're here. I didn't think I was just talking on my own. It's very complicated. So today you're gonna hear from a power-packed team of leaders in our community. First, we're gonna hear from Doreen Kirkmeyer. Why don't you stand up, Doreen? She's a manager of our planning office, and she's gonna give you a preview of Rochester 2034. That's something that will be coming out in the next couple of months that you do not want to ignore. It's very vital. It will cover the planning for the city in the next 15 years, and you're a vital part of that. Next, we'll hear from Dana Miller, our Director of Development Services. If you can stand up, and Paul Scuderi, Director of Real Estate in our Land Bank. They'll be giving you an overview of the Rochester Land Bank, real estate operations, including how you can acquire properties. We'll also hear from Gary Kirkmeyer. He is Director of Buildings and Zoning. Many of you know Gary in this room, right? So he'll be highlighting several mapping tools that our team has created in the last few years. After Gary, we'll welcome a set of our partners, Lenny Skrill, and you didn't give him a big enough round of applause, but Lenny Skrill is from HCR. So the reason I say give him a round of applause, Lenny and his team provide financing through housing community renewal. Many of the projects that you see, particularly the affordable projects, his team funds. Lenny's out of Buffalo, he's in New York City, but he really could open up an office here because he's always in Rochester helping us. We will also hear from Nicholas Petragani. I said it right? Yes. I got it, good. From CPC. And CPC is one of our sponsors here. Marion Zinter, I'd be remiss in not bringing attention to Marilyn. Marilyn, where are you? Miriam, excuse me, where are you? Okay, there she goes in the back. Many of the projects you see coming on board right now, they played a role in financing. We'll also hear from Sean Burr. He's the interim director of RHA. And finally, we'll close out with presenters from the Housing Council and Pathstone. And we'll wrap up with a reception. You'll have a chance to ask detailed questions from the different presenters. So, is everybody ready? Yeah. Is everybody ready? Yeah. All right, great. So let's bring up Doreen. Now, mind you, some of us we haven't spoken to a room this big before, so be patient, be kind. This is a tough crowd. We know some of you in here. So be nice. Yeah, I know some of y'all in here. Be nice and go ahead, Doreen. Take it away.
Thank you, Commissioner, for warming up the room like that. So again, my name is Doreen Kirkmeyer. I'm the Manager of Planning for the City of Rochester. The City Planning Office is a newly formed office. We're about 2 years old. And although the Planning Office is only 2 years old, I have been with the city for almost 30 years. And I come from a place of implementation in city government, so that gave me a nice, unique perspective in coming into planning. So the first task that was given to us was a very small task. It was, can you please create a plan for the entire city of Rochester? And you have a staff of 3 people. So we did it, and the other thing is we decided to do it ourselves rather than hiring a consultant. We love the city, we know the city, and we wanted to get out there, and we wanted it to be from our heart. So we decided to write it ourselves. So it's long, which is reflective of the love that we have for the city. So I hope that you can, we are preparing some things now to help digest it for you, so it won't be too overwhelming. So the last comprehensive plan for the city was written in the 90s, so clearly it's time for a new plan. And we were deciding on what the time frame should be for our plan, because comprehensive plans can go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. And so as we were looking out, what are we thinking, we realized that the city's 200th birthday is in 2034. And conveniently, that's 15 years out from when we plan to put the plan out to community. So it worked out very nicely, and I know 2034 is a little bit, whoops, I gotta change the slide here. So, you know, it is an odd number, 2034, but now you know, you've got the inside scoop of where it came from. You'll notice that there's a tagline on our logo, and that is "Where the River Flows," and that stems from, that's from the mayor herself. She tagged it, and she really wanted to pull in that new emphasis, her emphasis on the Genesee River. And you're hearing a lot about Rock the Riverway. The river is, you know, the city of Rochester has a lot of waterfront between the canal, the river, the lake, and we really need to emphasize that and recognize that and pull it out. And you all know, as investors, you know that waterfront property is valuable, and so we need to really start to pull that in, that value. So the next thing was, after we figured out the time frame and kind of what our goals were, we had to sit down and figure out, we had to frame it. What are we looking for here? What are we trying to do? You know, so we asked ourselves some questions. Where do we see the city? Where do we see the city in 15 years? What do we look like? These are the things we need to know. This is what the plan needs to tell us. How do we get there? How do we reach that vision of how we look? What are the values that we're going to apply as we're getting there? And what do we love about Rochester, and how can we build on that? And I'll tell you a little bit, we have a theme running through the plan about loving Rochester. And we thought of that ourselves because, like I said, we have a passion for Rochester, and we know that our community members do as well. So we would go out in the community for our meetings, and you know, when City Hall comes out to the community meetings, we tend to hear a lot of grousing and grumbling and, oh, the city this and you know, a lot of complaining. And so we'd get to the end of our meeting and we would say, okay, let's talk about what you love about your neighborhood. And this is every neighborhood across the city. What do you love about your neighborhood? And the room changed. People's faces changed, their body language changed, and they couldn't wait to talk about what they love about their neighborhood. And again, I'm talking about every neighborhood in the city. So they would get up and we'd make them write down all the things they love about their neighborhood. And then there was so much on the pad when they wrote it that we had to then go around and have them prioritize what those things are that they love. So at the end of the process, and we've covered 50 neighborhoods in the city, and we have all the things that they love about their neighborhoods, and we prioritized them, and we found a singular characteristic, and we created this graphic that you'll see in the comprehensive plan that talks about what people love about the city all around geographically in the city. We also did What Do You Love About Rochester at some of our pop-up events, our community events, and again, I mean, people just couldn't say it fast enough, all the things they love about Rochester. I have the easel pads up on my office to remind me every day the excitement that people have around what they love about Rochester. So ultimately what a plan has, and this is pretty standard for most plans, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, but it creates a vision, and then the guiding principles, those are value statements for the plan, and we have the action plan. So let me see what my notes are about that. So the vision statement is fairly short, it's very aspirational, everyone will look at it and go, yeah, right, you know, but this is what we want to look like in 2034. And our guiding principles are, you know, standard principles. You think about equity, healthy living, we have prosperity. These are things we want to measure ourselves against, but also Rochester added some guiding geographic principles. So we want to be a beautiful city. We want to have, we want to focus on the pedestrian. We want beautiful buildings. We want beautiful parks. So we have some geographic principles as well. And again, I want to just restate that the action plan is written from an implementer standpoint, and it tends to drill down. And the strategies are something we wanted to be able to tell, you know, talk to us, you know, talk to the community about, and have them be able to embrace some of those strategies at a level that they could actually see them being implemented. So that's the level of the action plan. It's not just like we want to be a beautiful city. It's really drills down into specific strategies. And I want to just say that this plan is a plan not for City Hall entirely, although City Hall will play a big role, but this is your plan. And this is, the community helped build the plan. This is your plan, and you are going to help us create that aspirational vision that we've created for 2034. So let's just talk briefly. I know this can get a little dry, but I really want to drive this home. This was a community-driven plan. My staff and I spent 6 months just going out in the community. We went to 50 we met with 50 different neighborhood groups. We had 30 stakeholder, those are topic-based meetings. We met with the urban ag people and the environmental groups and the Center for Disability Rights, all the different kind of people who care about a particular state, or they're not just geographic-based like the neighborhood things, but it's topic-based. So we went to them and we got to over 100 stakeholder groups in the city. So we also had a survey out there, and some of you might remember the last survey that we put out. We got a total for the 2 surveys of 4,000 responses, and we collected over 80,000 data points. If you go on the city's webpage and go to the comprehensive plan webpage, you will see the results of all the community comments and the survey results summarized in a dashboard that's very interactive. So you can search. If you're interested to know what did the community say about historic buildings or pets or whatever, you can search by words, so you can really find out what people want to see. We engaged kids because obviously in 15 years there are a new round of adults. So we went to RCSD, the school district. We went to the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council. We had pop-up events at the public market, Celebrate City Living. We went to college campuses to talk to students about what it takes to get them to stay in Rochester. And then we also had component studies, which we'll talk about in a minute, and those component studies each had their own input process, usually targeted focus groups for that. So it's not just testimonial driven. It's not just driven by what we hear from people, but it's also based in data. Okay, so and of course my staff. There's 4 of us total. We're not experts. We're not experts in every technical field. We did have to go out and get some assistance on those. So these are some technical studies we hired out. We had a housing market study done last year, a transit supportive corridor study. And the transit supportive corridor, just to try to interpret that for you, is basically how do we support transit through our land use regulations and our land use policy. We did a commercial corridor study like the mayor alluded to, and then we also, we're finished, and the commercial corridor study is finishing up now, the Comprehensive Access Mobility Plan, which we fondly call the CAMP. The CAMP is in its final stages as well, and that's the transportation plan for the city, which is these are all brought into the comprehensive plan. So I know that you are in this room particularly interested in the housing market, and so I'm using the housing market study as an example to talk about how some of this technical data, this analysis was brought into and how we interpret it in the comprehensive plan. So the 2018 housing market study used factors such as market strength, bank foreclosures, property distress, so number of violations on a property, to identify housing market typologies that helped frame the action plan. Now, nothing looks surprising here, correct? We kind of see the same, we all know that this has been the same look for many years. But the interesting thing about this is not so much as this broad brush look at it, but let's talk about the edges. So we see how there are edges between the different typologies. And the blue typology is our lowest demand housing market. The green is our middle market, we call it, and the red is the highest housing, demand housing market. So you talk about the edges, and we see it now in data and maps supported, and those edges are going to change over time. So we can we have a base now that we can move from and measure, and we want to make sure, we want to really look at this to see where this is where the tipping points are, and where our neighborhoods have the potential to be tipping into the blue from the green or even from the red, and how do we design policy and programming to try to influence that tipping so that it tips up into the higher housing demand market. Some of the other things we see is beyond just this map. It also goes in and really analyzes each one of those different market types. So the the green, the middle market, is where we have the highest level of owner occupancy. And the red area, we have the highest amount of renter occupancy. So that's kind of interesting to know. But so now we, in blue, of course, you know, we want to make sure that we're not designing programming to concentrate poverty. We want to make sure our housing policies aren't putting owner occupancy into a market where people are going to lose equity. Okay, we want to make sure we're protecting home ownership. So we look at the green market, and that's where we have our you know, most of our housing, our owner occupied housing. So how can we design housing policy and programming to stabilize, target owner occupants in those areas and try to stabilize and encourage success as owner occupants. And then in the red area, the pinkish red there, it's, you know, we got to keep that market strong and solid, and do what we can to influence the market. You know, market's going to go on its own, but we can certainly not try to put things in place to hurt it. But you know what we want there? We want more inclusion in there. We want more diversity in income levels in our highest housing market. So those are the kind of that's how you're seeing some of that data play a role in what we've done for an action plan for the city. And there was something else I was going to say about that. I guess not. So we can talk more about this. You know, we haven't released the housing market study yet. It's going to be released at the time that we release the comprehensive plan. So you can all look at it then. It'll be an appendix to the comprehensive plan. You know, one of the things I did want to say, I remember now, was that we also, it's not just housing that this influences or this informs, but also things like our vacant land management strategies. And what do we want to see happen to vacant land in these different typologies? What about urban ag? What about energy production? What about economic development? How does this housing market type influence or inform those strategies? So you'll see it throughout the document. So the idea here, like the mayor kind of you know, alluded to, is that we're going to launch Rochester 2034 in the spring at some point. It will be subject to public review, and we're going to probably do public review for a few months, and we'll be going out to the community again, getting public comment at meetings, pop-up events. You'll also be able to submit your own comments to us directly in writing through email. We will have an online version that's easy to work with. We'll have paper versions. We're going to have a shortened like executive summary that'll really help you to navigate the document. And then ultimately it goes to City Council, probably around the fall, for adoption. So, you know, again, I want to make sure you understand that this is an important document for you as stakeholders in our community. This is not a City Hall plan, say it again. I need you to look at it and really, you know, think about it and see where you can play a role in the implementation of it. You're going to see as a part, each action step has a partner identified, and sometimes it says developers, it says landlords, business owners as the partners. And the other thing I want to say is, you know, there are things changing in Rochester. We've got to change the narrative here in Rochester. We are our own worst enemies. We've got to be more positive, and this document is meant to try to inspire a little hope for the future. And really, we as stakeholders in the community, especially you as property owners and investors, it's time to change the narrative and start talking positively about Rochester and not negatively. We need to sell the city. You know, the success of the city is your success. So it's time to change that narrative and change the message out there. And with that, I would like to, I'll end my presentation. If anybody has any questions, I'll be roaming around over there, and you can pull me aside and talk to me. And I think, so Paul Scuderi, Director of Real Estate, is following me. And then Dana, are you also coming up?
We'll be following Paul.
You're following Paul, okay, great. So, Paul?
All right, hello folks, how you guys doing tonight? So I'm going to take you through the sales programs for the City of Rochester. I'll through here a little bit. Just a quick show of hands, how many people have bought properties from the city at one of our auctions? Okay, quite a few. All right, good. So for some of you, this will be more of a refresher, but for some others, it might be some new information. Again, we're going to go through this relatively quickly. I will be at a table in the other room afterwards, so if there's any questions that you have, or maybe I went a little too quickly over something, you can catch me over there and we can try to work through your questions. So for anybody who's bought a property with the city, you know, most of the properties that the city has in its inventory were acquired at our tax foreclosure auction. Okay? Tax foreclosure auction is very different from the city auction. Okay? We don't own those properties at the tax foreclosure. You don't have an opportunity to inspect them before you buy them. At a city property, city auction, city owns those properties, and we actually have a showing schedule. Now, any sale that we do requires city council's approval. There's no exceptions to that. Okay? And when we get these properties through the tax foreclosure, we get them ready for the sale, and we physically inspect every one of these properties. Okay? We're just trying to determine the status. Half the properties are demolition properties. You guys will never see those because they've been vacant for years before we got a hold of them. They're not really saleable, and they're going to lead to a lot more problems if we were trying to sell them. So if we can, we go through these properties, we determine whether they're going to be sold by auction, whether they're going to go to RFP. If it's vacant land, we may just sell it to the adjoining owner if it doesn't have any other marketability, or if it's not in a project area. Demolition is one of the other ones, or we could hold it for development if it is in a project area. So we do determine, there's a lot of factors that we use to determine whether we're going to sell the property, or whether we're going to RFP it, or whether we're going to demolish it. Physical condition is obviously one of the first ones that we look at. If there's any environmental issues on the property, maybe there's a city project nearby, or maybe there's a city parcel right next door to it. Those would be factors that we would determine whether we're going to sell it, whether we're going to hold it, or whether we're going to put it up for RFP. When we do sell properties at the auction, before we sell it, we have to pre-qualify, we pre-approve every bidder who's going to be participating in our auction. Okay, these are the city's purchaser eligibility guidelines. So all these things, I'm going to go through them very quickly, but you can kind of see them on the screen here. You cannot have any delinquent unpaid taxes on any property within the city. You can't have lost a property to the city within 5 years to tax foreclosure. Can't have any unresolved code violations, no unpaid tickets in housing court. You can't have a sale of a city-owned property canceled within the past 3 years. You can't have any more than 3 ongoing sales of city-owned properties. Yeah, I'm going to get to that in a moment. But if anybody's bought these properties from us, these are difficult rehabs. These are not the paint and carpet houses you see at 12:30 at night on TV. These are substantially different rehabs. Try to do more than 3, but you're probably taking on more than you can at this point. So once you are approved, every approved bidder gets written notice that they've been approved, and the showing schedule is provided to you as well. We don't give the showing schedule to people who have not been approved as bidders. We only want the people in these houses who've been approved. Now we can't stop people. People just show up sometimes and they walk in. But the showing schedule is only provided to those folks who are approved. So you have the opportunity to inspect properties that are going to be offered in the sale. And depending on the size of the sale, if it's a big auction, you're probably only going to have the opportunity to show that property once. So if it's a property you're interested in, you got to try to do your best to clear your schedule for that 1 hour that we're selling it. But if it's a smaller auction, we might have the opportunity to show it twice. It doesn't always happen, even if it's a small sale. So try the best you can to get to the time that's been posted. We sell them all in as-is condition. All sales are final. All sales are final. The auction is done like you would see it anywhere else. It's an open, competitive bidding process. Okay, the highest bidder wins. Okay. The winning bidder, I'm going to edit this as you see here. The winning bidder, it says we'll have approximately 12 months to complete the rehab. Get rid of the word approximately. You have 12 months to complete the sale. Okay. Okay. I'll take that little ambiguity out of it. Okay, it's 12 months. It's not 13 months. You have 12 months. So you buy one property, 12 months is probably not that bad to get a property fixed up in a year. Buy 2 properties, 2 big rehab properties, That's a little more difficult until you buy 3 big, huge rehab projects in a year. You've really been an awful lot. So anybody who's done these before, and I see some experienced folks here, you guys, you know what I'm talking about. These are difficult rehabs, and it's codified in the city's charter. 3 is the maximum, and it's done. Honestly, it's done not to limit the opportunities and success you have. It's really there to protect you. People bankrupt themselves in these houses. You really got to be careful. Now, there's the RFP sales, which are requests for proposals. Those are specialty properties, commercial properties, mixed use. We would put those for RFPs. There's no pre-qualification here for these. You can participate, submit your bid. We will still check you against the city's eligibility requirements after we've selected you as the proposal that we're going to go with. You'll be given an opportunity to clear those up. Some of them you're not going to be able to clear up. If you lost a property to the city, tax foreclosure within 5 years, the clock's got to run out before you get to that 5-year mark before you're eligible again. But if it's a matter of resolving some code violations or maybe paying some delinquent taxes, that's your opportunity there. So it's one of the things to remember. If you plan to participate in one of our city events, get out in front of those ahead of time. If you have some taxes you haven't paid, you're behind on water, you got a housing court ticket you haven't paid, get out in front of those so that you can be eligible to participate. So with an RFP, you have an opportunity to inspect. Usually it's typically like 4, sometimes 6 weeks that will give everybody a chance to prepare your proposal, because we want to see a really well put together proposal. Because we're going to want to see what you plan to do with the property. We want to see that you've checked it against the city's zoning. We want to see that you have some type of a estimate for the rehab, and that you can back up where you got that estimate from. If you tell us it's going to be $200,000 to fix this house or this property or this mixed use, whatever it is, we want to know where you got that number from. Do you have an architect help you, a contractor? It's not $200,000 because Bob said so. It's got to be somebody who knows how to estimate construction costs. Okay? There's a whole committee in City Hall, all cross-departmental, who will look at it and make a determination as to whether or not it's a realistic proposal or not. Vacant land. We do a lot of vacant land sales. A lot of them just go to the adjoining owner. If we don't feel there's a market, that there's marketable, that it has any real development potential, there's really nothing going on, no developments in that area, we're happy to sell it to the adjoining owner. If it's in an area where we're trying to assemble sites, or it's in a development area, we're probably going to hold that property back. And you may call us and ask us, and at that point we're going to say it's not available for sale. The city wants to hold that property. We typically do offer it to the adjoining owner, but we're not required to do that. When we do sell it to the adjoining owner, we do require you to combine it with the adjoining lot. It's typically a house. We don't want the property back, so we want you to. So we require you to adjoin it, make it one parcel, because essentially, if somebody gets in trouble, first thing you stop paying is that little vacant land over there. So we don't want that to happen. We don't want these properties back. So we do some direct sales, not very common. We do it for very specific reasons: job creation, job retention. Maybe there's some economic development there, or very unique site-specific conditions. They can be terrain, it can be, I'm going to decide to wrap it up here. I'm going to wrap it up here. So those are the conditions that we would do it under. Again, I will be next door if you need to touch base with me on anything that I didn't cover, or maybe I had to breeze over a little quickly. I'm going to turn it over to Dana Miller, and he's going to talk you through the Rochester Land Bank. Thank you all.
Thank you, Paul. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. It's great to see so many people here. There are a few seats sprinkled around up here if those of you in the back would like to sit down, just as a point, although we won't be here a whole lot longer. So I'm going to talk to you briefly about the Rochester Land Bank. This is a relatively new entity, although it was started in 2013. It was started because of New York state law that allowed the creation of land banks. And at this point, there are 25 land banks in New York State. But at the time, we were one of only 8 when we were formed in 2013. The funding for the land bank came from the Attorney General's office and also from Enterprise Community Partners. Now, the Office of the Attorney General is really focused a lot on, and this started as an aftermath of the foreclosure crisis and the fact that there was so much work that had been done by some people to provide loans that really weren't great loans, that as those people were fined, the Office of the Attorney General said, let's take those fines that we've collected and use those in a more positive way. How can we get more housing in the hands of more people? And that led us with the land bank, led us to the land bank legislation. So the land bank is a 501c3. It's a nonprofit organization that is very closely aligned with the city. So as an example, Paul Scuderi, who you just heard from, works in our Department of Real Estate, but he's also the director of the land bank. I work in business and housing development, but I'm the chair of the land bank board. So we do have some cross relationship between the city and the land bank. And the land bank legislation provides us with some very important powers that you see listed here. The super bid, the credit bid, and we are, as I mentioned, tax exempt. The super bid is very important because what that allows us to do is when we go to the auction, and we go to the same auction that you go to, but because we're a land bank, we have superpowers. And the superpower is that whatever the opening bid is for that property, we get to bid that and then we get it. So we don't have to compete with everybody else for the properties. So generally speaking, we will go through the list, look at properties that we might be interested in, and then we will identify those so that when we go to the auction starts off with a list of properties that the land bank wants. And if those properties are still available, they haven't been redeemed by the owner, then we have our super bid, and we get to bid on those. We also have a credit bid, and the credit bid allows us to bid on properties and not have to pay for them right away, which is a very important superpower. So the land bank is really designed to acquire and maintain problem properties. And what we do is we take these properties that otherwise would probably just sit. They would become these houses that you read about all the time, these zombie houses that are sitting there and nobody quite owns them and nobody knows what's happening. So we acquire these properties and then we try to get them back into productive use. We have a number of partners, and you'll see those on the next slide, and we work with those partners to take these properties that we've acquired and then get them rehabilitated and then have them turn into owner-occupant properties. So one of our big missions as a city, we love people who are landlords or housing providers, as I've been told you would prefer to be called. So we love those. And if you took them all in aggregate, everybody that owns property, you'd probably be one of the largest businesses in the city. But we also like homeowners. And so we're trying to find ways to increase the home ownership as well. So we are able to obtain the property at low cost through the super bid. We also get to hold property tax-free. We get to clear title and extinguish back taxes. We can lease the properties for temporary uses if necessary, and we can negotiate sales not only on the highest bid, but on alignment with community needs. So if we're trying to help with workforce housing or other kinds of uses, recreational space, we can do that. So the Rochester Land Bank Corporation follows the same sale process as the city, except we don't have to get city council approval. That's a minor point, but it is a point. We almost always acquire these properties through the tax foreclosure auction, where we get to use the super bid. And after acquisition, then we take a look at the properties, because in many cases, these are tax foreclosed properties. We don't have the opportunity to go into these properties in advance. So we have the same liability that many of you have. You're looking at the property from the outside and trying to decide whether or not you'd like to acquire it. But after acquisition, then we take a look and we make a quick decision. Yep, we can rehab this. Nope, we got to tear it down. So it's either one or the other. And we also acquire properties on behalf of our development partners. So we're going to talk about the development partners here. We currently have 6. And we did something called an RFQ, a request for qualifications. And anybody is eligible to answer that request for qualifications. And then from that request for qualifications, we selected 6 development partners. The Greater Rochester Housing Partnership, which has done a tremendous number of houses. They've rehabbed more than 700 houses in the last 15 years. Flower City Habitat for Humanity generally builds new houses from scratch, but they've been willing to work with the land bank to take some properties and actually rehab those as opposed to building brand new. They use the same model. They find a person who's going to own that home. They bring them in. They provide sweat equity on the rehab, but they're starting from a position of actually having a structure rather than having a vacant lot. Rochester Revitalization is a new addition to our development partner list, and it's a company that's headed up by some young guys who are really, really aggressively rebuilding houses in the city. City Roots Community Land Trust is an important one. Many cities have land trusts, and a land trust is very important because a land trust is able to take a property, they own the underlying land, but lease the house out to someone, and the house, once it becomes an affordable house, remains an affordable house in perpetuity. So there is no real opportunity for a land bank house to continue to increase in rental costs. Rochester Housing Authority is a fantastic partner. They have tremendous amount of housing in the area, and they've been working with us. And Project Phoenix is a brand new situation where we're using the labor unions and some young folks to actually do rehab of these houses, and once the houses are rehabbed, they're sold. So we expect to issue the request for qualifications each year. Those partners are our partners for the current year. We will issue another request for qualifications later in this year, and the criteria include our normal city purchaser requirements, but we also look for some past experience in doing rehab. We look for available financial resources of at least $10,000 per property. We look for a team that can actually carry out the rehab of the properties. They have to agree to retain ownership of any property that they acquire for a period of 3 to 5 years. So generally, that would be our owners who would be living there for 3 to 5 years. But it also could be the partners if they're going to rent the properties out. And they have to demonstrate an ability to manage those properties. So there are a few things we can't do. Even though we have some superpowers, we don't have all superpowers. We can't offer financial or technical assistance in rehab. That's why we go through the process of getting the qualifications of the partners, because we have to know that the partners have financial resources, have the technical knowledge, and the ability to do the rehab. We generally convey these properties with the development partners' arranged agreement. And as was stated with the last presentation that Paul gave, you have to complete the rehab and obtain a C of O within 12 months. So the 12 months is a hard and fast rule. We don't want these properties sitting out there in a partially rehabbed state for a very, very long time. Once you get the property and you're able to start working on it, we really expect it to be completed within 12 months. Sometimes that can be challenging because, as stated, these properties are in a various state of disrepair, and there are some things like if you're going to paint the outside of the house, you can't do that any time of the year. So there are some scheduling challenges that the developers have to work through to make sure that they have the ability to finish this in 12 months. So I'm going to move on to the next speaker here, and the next speaker is going to be my colleague and very, very hard-working person, Gary Kirkmeyer, who is the Director of Buildings and Zonings for the city. But as you finish here and go next door, many of us will be next door in the other room at the tables from the City of Rochester, people that work with Paul in real estate, from the Land Bank Corporation, people who work with us all in the Land Bank Corporation. So thanks again for being here today. Hope this information is helpful and look forward to seeing you next door.
Thanks, Dana. Good afternoon. With me today, Pam Delaney. Pam is our senior GIS analyst in MBD, and Pam is primarily responsible for many of the data platforms that we're going to talk about today, bringing it to life. But before we get to the data, I've got to take 1 minute, and I know it's going to count against my time, but do you feel like you got to stand up for a minute? Yeah, stand up for a minute stretch, because, man, I'm glad it was my turn to get up, because it was ready to get up. 1 minute, just stretch real quick. Because that's hard to sit for 2 hours. It's hard to sit for 2 hours at the theater, let alone in a chair like that.
Trying to win our love, Gary?
I'm always trying to win your love. We can't get enough love in buildings and zoning. All right? You good? You refreshed? All right, so while Pam is bringing up the first data set that we want to look at, you ready? Okay, let's get going. You're cutting into my time now. So before we get to the data, though, it's not too often we get before 300 landlords. We have several well-established landlord groups, but the opportunity to speak to 300 landlords, I'm not going to fail and take advantage of the opportunity to echo what the mayor said, and I'll give it some supporting statistics. We would not have been able to lower the elevated blood lead levels of children by 85%, issue 4,000 C of O's a year, close complaint cases within 60 days, or have a voluntary compliance rate of 89%, if not for the hard work that you do every day. So understand, know that we appreciate the partnership environment that we have in buildings and zoning, and we appreciate how hard you work every day to afford our residents safe and habitable housing. So thank you. Yeah, give yourself a round. So the city has been working really hard over the last several years to put as much data as we can out to the public. We're a firm believer in transparency, but we also want to do it so that it's useful information that you can use in your business ventures. So we're going to start with, all these maps can be found on the NBD Map Gallery. So you can get them all from one section of our website, NBD Maps. You have a copy in your folders of the list of all the databases. We're only going to talk about 5 of them because we don't have time, but we'll be over next door if you want to talk about any of the others, or if you have any other questions for buildings and zoning afterwards. So we're going to start with a property information system. Now, I hope you all know about the property information system, because if you're buying properties in the city of Rochester, you need to know about this database, okay? It's going to tell you a lot you need to know about a particular property that you may be interested in. So I'm just going to go rather quickly through what the data sets are within the property information system. So you can see Pam's toggling down, I got a little pointer here, to the different tabs. So you have a general property tab, you have an assessment tab. Again, we're not going to go through all the data in here, we don't have time. You've got tax situation detailed, got details. Now I will say something a little bit about the photos. A lot of times code enforcement finds themselves involved with a porch that was rehabbed and closed, a driveway that was expanded. And frequently, this is the information via these photos that we have to go back and look at what the property looked like before as compared to now. You should do the same, all right? So concern yourselves when you buy a property, if the front porch in 2007 was not enclosed and they're selling it as enclosed, you probably should make sure there was a permit to get that enclosed, because you want to inherit that problem. Sometimes that's an unsolvable problem, all right? So in addition to that, you've got water information, you've got last sale date information, you've got zoning district, and what this will do for you, if you click on that, and again, we're not going to do all the clicking it because it'll take more time, but that'll bring you right to the zoning section for that district. So if it's R1 district, it'll be right to the zoning R1 district section. You can look in there and see what's the permissible uses, what are the specially permitted uses, what are the prohibited uses in that area. And then really want to focus just a second on the code enforcement tab, because again, we're pushing this data out there for you and for your benefit, right? So some of the things that you're going to see on here, you see if there's an open case, you can see what inspectors involved, how many violations, whether or not it's in code enforcement, and what should be of most interest to you as you're looking to buy this property is, are there pending fines? And the reason why the city pushes this out is because we expect them to get satisfied in that closing transaction. All right? This is not about penalizing you as the buyer. It's about instituting accountability to the seller. Okay? Leveling the playing field is what code enforcement tries to do. That's supportive to your business. You're taking care of your property. You earn the right to have us make sure your neighboring owner does the same, right? All right, so from here we're going to go into, so that's a property information system. Again, if you're buying property in the city, you got to know that system. Now, the next system we're going to talk about is building blocks. How many people know building blocks? Oh, that's not enough. All right, so building blocks came to us a couple of years ago, well, maybe a year and a half ago, through the Attorney General's City Rise grant program. City Rise was a program that the Attorney General started to help cities deal with vacant and abandoned properties. There was first the land bank legislation, which Dana talked about. Then there was the zombie grant legislation that helped us support the efforts that we have to manage vacant properties. And then City Rise came around and said, okay, what do cities need? And most cities needed the technological advancements to monitor, manage, actually know where their vacant properties are. That wasn't an issue for us. What we saw the value in building blocks is this is an analytical data platform that allows all the data that we were pushing out to the public, so water, assessment, crime, code enforcement, all the data that we're pushing out is centralized here. And the difference between this and property information is this is searchable filters that you can narrow a search down across that data to get subjects of interest and bring it right over into your Excel program to use in whatever way you want to use it. We'll show you one example of that. Before we get too far into it though, know that this platform likes Google Chrome. It doesn't like Internet Explorer. So you want to make sure you have Google Chrome when you open this up because it won't play nice with Internet Explorer. So you'll see the first thing we'll look at is just the, all of the different, these data sets up here, right? These are all tabs that have different data. Pam clicked on the property attributes. That's pretty much the assessment data, right? That's all your use and your assessment data. From there, if you go into the vacancy tab, it's going to tell you whether or not the property is vacant or occupied, and you can search how long has the property been vacant. In the permits, this is really our business permit information. And then in code enforcement, it has open case data, fees owed, violation count, whether or not it's a demo case, and whether or not there's open permits on the property. That's all your crime data. Utilities is the water data. And then the foreclosures, this is interesting because this brings in data from outside the city. So the tax foreclosure is a city data set. And just so you all know, when tax foreclosure equals yes here, that just means the property was included in the initial stages of the action. What we can't have yet in this data is it doesn't update when property is redeemed. We're working to get to there. So just understand right now, if you go to tax foreclosure, that property was in the tax foreclosure, may still be, but this won't tell you that yet. But it's still useful data. And then below that is the Liz pendants. So any foreclosure filing with Monroe County from 2008 on is captured here. And that's updated on a regular basis. So you can find out in what level of financial distress a property is right in this program. The demographics, that's all the census data that Ptolemy, the company that built this platform or designed it, they bring all this in for free. So this is no effort to the city. The program came with all the census data. And then the overlays, so you can sort by any one of these areas. So, council district, census tract, neighborhood, police beat, inspector area, all of those are searchable filters. So just understand that's a filter just like everything else. So when you click on one of those, you limit your search to that area. In addition to that, you can draw your own parameters, and we're going to show you an example of what might be of interest to you. So we're gonna go through and we're going to look at properties that are tax delinquent, and we're going to pick a little 2-block area that might be an area you have investments in and you want to see, and your intent here is to say, I want to see what's in the city foreclosure action or potentially in the city foreclosure action around my investments because I want to keep investing in this area. And so tax foreclosure, yes. Current use, Pam just selected structure because in this case we don't care about land. And now she's just going to draw just a little 2-block area. And now the data is going to be limited to that area now. This is not our internet access, by the way, so your internet access might be faster. That's troubling. I feel like I'm selling something up here. No, believe me, this thing works fast. It's like a politician would say that. All right, so.
Keep talking about what we can do once that works.
All right. There we go. Okay. So we got 87 properties here, right, that fit that description: structure, tax foreclosure, that geographical boundary. Now Pam's going to bring this over to Excel really quickly and easily. Now, when you go in to click that to bring it to Excel, you've got a whole bunch of other data you can bring in. You click on anything that's of interest to you. You want to know who the owner is? Click on owner. You want to know how big the building is? Click on that. You want to know the property type? Click it. Whatever you click there is going to be pulled over into Excel. So she's just going to grab a few things and bring it over. And click on the CSV, and that's going to bring it right into Excel. So now we're not going to do a lot. We don't have a lot of time to manipulate this, but this is all that data you just searched for. All right, nice, neat, clean, and easy. You can filter that as you. I'm sure all of you know how to use Excel. Lots of ways to filter that further down to narrow your search of properties you might be interested in. All right, so we can talk a lot more about this if you have questions in next door, but we're going to move on to the code-compliant rental properties. So I only want to do a couple quick things with this, right? Oftentimes, everything is a negative, right? Everything's painted negative. We have 9,000. If we would have looked in building blocks, I would tell you that we probably have 9,000 properties with open cases, right? That's kind of a negative message. Even though you all know intimately, as we all know in building zoning intimately, they're all at various stages of compliance, right? Here, we're going to say the opposite. So as Pam zooms out of this screen, you can see how blue the city of Rochester is. These are code-compliant rental properties. That means they have a current C of O and no outstanding code violations. This is your hard work. So I just want to do one thing here and just click on one of the points just so you can see. It also will tell you the C of O information. So, you know, this is the C of O information. So the C of O was issued on that date, expires on that date. Okay, that's all we're going to talk about for this one. Now we're going to talk about the City of Rochester Real Estate. This is one of our newer platforms. So Paul talked about how to buy property from the city. Some of you already do that. This is the website or the map that has all city inventory on it. Anything owned by the city is in this inventory, and it has various statuses. So I'm sure the status of most interest would be available for sale. So there's ways in here, and we're going to have to kind of abbreviate some of this, but there's ways in here to do similar things that we just did, right? But at the very least, if you have an area that you have identified, you zero in, you click on something, you can see what it is, that it's offered for sale, and you can contact real estate to find out, what process is that in and how do I get involved with it. All right, we're going to jump over. So now we're going to jump into projects and plans. Do people know about this? No? Oh, it's a good thing we're having this meeting. All right, so this is a really useful set of data here, right? This is, you want to know where to invest? You want to know where the city's investing? This will tell you. This will tell you where the city's invested and going to invest, both from a right-of-way, streets perspective, and a housing development and business development perspective. So we're just going to look really quickly at, so you see development projects. And Pam, let's scroll down on the other side there to show what the, so these are, see the indicators of what they are. So if you wanted to pick, let's pick a housing project. Now, every one of these, you can click on it, and if you want more information, that click will take you exactly to the web page or the document that details that project. What it is, when it was, when it is, when it's completed, all that stuff. If we go over to the street projects, this is all DES's effort, right? This is where we're doing work in the right-of-way. So you can click on the street project and, again, get whatever information you want about that particular project. Environmental sustainability, again, DES's efforts to create a more sustainable environment, right? Same thing here. That happens to be the solar farm. Click on that, and you can see all you want to know about the solar farm. And then this, which, you know, is a little more complicated to use because there's a lot of plans in here, but this represents all of the neighborhood plans and other plans over the last 10 years. Any plan that was developed and adopted over the last 10 years is on this map. So we'll just give you an example of, in the northeast quadrant, if you click on this, you've got El Camino Revitalization Plan. You've got the northeast quadrant strategic plan. You've got the Brownfield Opportunity 14621. So anytime there's more than one applicable plan, it'll have an arrow to click, toggle back and forth. This becomes of interest if you're buying properties that aren't your typical 1 and 2 family, and you want to know, okay, what does the neighborhood plan say about, do they support this kind of use that I want to have? That kind of thing, so that you're in tune with the neighbor, because oftentimes when you're coming through a zoning process, we're going to ask, how's the neighborhood feel about it? If you've got to go through a zoning process, we want the neighborhood to buy into what you're trying to do. Okay, what is it? Do we have another one?
That's it.
All right, so
Demolitions.
do we? How much time we got? We got time? All right, so we're going to go just to. I want to go to our buildings and zoning webpage real quick. And so just because I want you to know there's a whole bunch of additional useful information here for you. So even if you just go under essential links and documents, you have some of those databases, but you have a whole wealth of other things here that you can use. And one of the things, since we have a couple minutes, we want to show you the demolition tracker. Where is it up there?
I think
You got it open already?
I thought
Oh, there it is,
I
yeah.
did have it open, but I don't know where it is.
So if you want to know where the demolition activity is going on in the city, previous year, going forward, this will tell you. So you'll see, this is data since 2017, so that's how many we've done since then. Here's how many are in the pipeline. And you can see where they are, and you can see, you know, what stages they're at in the process. Okay? That's all we want to know. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Lenny Skrill and Nick Petrogani.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'll tell you, CPC does a number of these presentations on small buildings and investing in small buildings across upstate New York. And I have to tell you, I don't think I've ever seen a turnout like this. So kudos to everybody that's in the room for coming today, and kudos to the city for organizing this. This is really a great event. Okay, let's see. Just keep going. Okay, there we go. Okay. So, a little bit about CPC first, because I'm thinking that most of the people in this room probably don't know who CPC is. We're a not-for-profit, affordable housing and community revitalization finance company, and housing is central to our mission. We believe that housing is key to revitalizing neighborhoods and communities. And as a lender, we're a little different from a traditional bank in that our goal is not necessarily just to lend, but our goal is to become your partner. As a developer, we want to become your partner. We want to provide not only flexible capital solutions to your projects and to the communities in which we work, but we also want to provide support and technical expertise. So we kind of take it to a next level and look at ourselves as a one-stop shop. Established in 1974, since that time we've invested over $10 billion across New York State in housing. That $10 billion translates into 186,000 residential units financed. In those residential units are housed 780,000 people. And because of the construction lending we do on these revitalization projects, that has translated into 112,000 construction jobs over the years. This is obviously a map of New York State. The orange dots in the blotches show those are essentially projects that we have financed. The green dots are offices that we have. We're headquartered in New York City. I'm the regional director of the Central New York region here. In this, for this map, we include Rochester in the Central region. I know that a lot of folks probably think of Rochester as Western New York. I direct the Western region as well. What's missing is we do actually have an office here in Rochester, staffed by Miriam Zinter. Miriam is in the back of the room, so she's our boots on the ground here. I think what I want to point out, though, is that you can see in the Central and Western region we have invested, and that's really not since 1974, but that's since 1995, when the upstate offices were established. We've invested $1 billion, over $1 billion in this region in housing. This basically shows our structure. This shows how CPC is a bridge, providing lending, providing dollars to borrowers and developers and community stakeholders. Essentially, there's 3 buckets of dollars that we have access to that we turn around and lend. There are about 13 commercial banks that are member banks of CPC. They provide us with a $500 million credit facility, which we use to provide construction financing to developers. We are also approved seller servicer for Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, and an approved HUD MAP lender. MAP stands for Multifamily Accelerated Processing. And then we have long-time partnerships with New York State HCR, the State of New York Mortgage Agency, and the New York City and New York State pension funds who purchase a lot of the permanent loans that we originate, insured by the State of New York Mortgage Agency. And of course, again, we bridge to borrowers like yourselves, developers, and then community stakeholders. So obviously the focus today is on small buildings, and small buildings are so important to upstate New York. As I said, we do this. We have these presentations across all of upstate New York. 71% of multifamily buildings in upstate New York are considered small buildings. So what we as lenders consider small would be 5 to 49 units. That's significant. The big problem, though, is that 67% of the units in these small buildings are in fair or poor condition. So a lot of that has to do with the fact that the margins, as you all know, if you own small properties, that the margins on small properties are very, very thin. It's really hard to make money and to have cash flow from those small properties. Much easier, what this graphic shows is that the more units in a building, the higher debt per unit you can access, and the lower expenses you have per unit, because it's economies of scale. You can stretch those expenses over more units. It's not the case in smaller buildings. Expenses are higher per unit, and it's harder to access capital. You know, if you have a 4-unit property and you have 1 vacancy, that's 25% of your income now that you've lost. So the margins are very, very low in small buildings. And as I said, it's hard for small owners to access capital. So CPC is aware of this. 70% of the loans that we've done since its inception have been targeted to small buildings. Again, we define that as 5 to 49 units. And you will see we have a table next door as well. We recently completed a financing guide for newer small building owners and developers, so folks that want to get into the business but really don't know where to start. I think it's a pretty comprehensive guide to investing in small properties. We have a lot of those booklets available next door. And then we continually to look at product mixes that could be used to service small investors. We work hand in hand, and we have for many, many years, with New York State HCR. Lenny and I have done these presentations before. He's going to talk. I'm not going to go into necessarily all of his programs, but we're going to hit on one here in particular that we have rolled out recently that we developed in conjunction with HCR and Lenny's team. It's called the Small Building Participation Loan Program, which again is specifically targeted to smaller properties, 5 to 40 units. And this is a very kind of a high-level overview of that program, but essentially the goal of the program is to bridge the gap between how much we, CPC, can finance on a project, what the total development cost is, and the point is to bring your equity down. Instead of investing 30% of the total development cost in a property from your equity, the point of this program is to try to bring that down to a level that hits close to 10%. So it makes it more feasible for developers to take on smaller properties. So again, eligible uses are 5 to 40 units. It can be used for substantial or moderate rehab, not new construction. New construction is not allowed in this program. It says construction and permanent financing available. That's where CPC would come in to provide that leg of the capital stack. As far as requirements go, this can't be used in conjunction with low-income housing tax credits or bonds, but truthfully, that's probably not a concern with this group because you're doing smaller projects. Those sources are for bigger projects. For fiscal year 2018-19, there's $20 million in this pot. The subsidy is up to $50,000 per residential unit. So with this program, you could potentially access $50,000 per unit on top of financing that CPC can provide. There are income restrictions on in this program. So units in a project can't exceed 120% of area median income. They could go lower than that, but on average across the board, the units have to average 80% of area median income. So you can have some at 120%, 100%, 60%, 50%, 70%. But again, across the board, they have to average 80%. Anybody that participates in this program will be required to enter into a regulatory agreement with HCR. It goes for a period of 30 years. CPC's financing that we can provide has a term of 30 years. It's something that the program requires. And honestly, that's a little unusual in commercial lending. You typically don't see a term of 30 years. You see that in single-family lending. But CPC has the ability to provide a 30-year term mortgage with a 30-year amortization. That's a requirement with this. Terms of our loans are dependent on the project, but the terms of the HCR subsidy piece is 0.5% interest only for the full 30 years. So, as I said, the equity requirements, again, this program is, what you're trying to do is buy the developer's equity down to 10%. A lot of times in these types of projects, you're going to need, depending on the condition of the property, if you're doing a rehabilitation project, you're probably going to end up investing more than 10% of your own equity in the project. The point of this program is to bring it down. And another requirement is that the permanent loan must be insured by the State of New York Mortgage Agency. Again, CPC has a long-term partnership with the State of New York Mortgage Agency. Virtually all of the permanent loans that we provide when we're financing construction projects are insured by Sony May. So that's something that we bring to the table. And I think that's it for mine. Lenny?
Good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Lenny Skrill. I work for New York State Homes and Community Renewal. I've been working in the Rochester area for pushing 35 years. Today I have the privilege of being sort of, at least in this room, the public face of the greatest of expansion of affordable housing opportunities in my generation. In 2017-2018 budget, the state legislature, with the urgence of the governor, expanded HCR's resources to do affordable housing by $5 billion, with the expectation of implementing a $20 billion expansion of affordable housing opportunities. I said $5 billion and $20 billion. That's a little bit of, most people think that's a lot of money. Okay. HCR has an incredible amount of programs to help people do affordable housing. Most of our resources are oriented to larger projects. I'm not going to get through all our programs today. I have a better idea. I want you to email. How many people have pens and paper? I want you to take down this email address: leonard.skrill at leonard dot skrill at nyshcr.org. I much rather talk about what you want to accomplish in real time than talking about all these programs in abstract. I'd rather hear your story, what you're trying to accomplish, and see if our programs make sense for you. Just to give you some of the projects this is a really amazing statistic. In the Rochester area, HCR in 2011 has made almost $500 million of investment in the city of Rochester, improving the quality of rental housing by almost 15,000 units since 2011. That's a lot of housing. So, the stuff you associate with our agency are big projects, like Sibley or Eastman Reserve. It was one of the projects that was featured just recently. We do a lot of big projects. Be honest with you, our agency is probably more oriented to bigger project sponsors. That's why we are collaborating with Community Preservation Corp on the small building preservation, because we know that this is an area of need. Essentially, what I want you guys, we're the ones funding it. In practical terms, Nick and Miriam are going to implement it on a day-to-day basis. So what I want you to do is reach out to Nick, reach out to Miriam, talk about your smaller project, come to an agreement with Nick and Miriam of what you're proposing, and then we'll set up a call with me to go over your project. But if you want an overall sense of how our programs work, what resources are available, use the email address. If you call me, you're going to get voicemail. If you email me, I will go to the support staff and say, set up a time to chat. We've had a lot of speakers. I just wanted to, I think Nick did a good job summarizing the small building projects. We have way more programs, but I'd rather hear from you directly about what you want to accomplish. And on the small building program, work with Nick, work with Miriam. They'll vet your deals. When they feel that it's ready to come to me, they'll present it. So then, I'm losing my track here. Who's my next speaker? So next speaker is my good buddy, Sean Burr.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for being here. It's good to see some familiar faces. I'd also like to thank each and every one of you that provide quality housing for our Section 8 participants. We appreciate you. And I will attest to how easy it is to get a hold of Lenny and to have him sit and talk with you. He is very receptive, and it is a great thing to have a representative of the state that accessible. So somewhere here, there's a pointer. Here we go. Okay, RHA, what you want to know and what you don't want to know. Our mission statement, we take pride in providing, being an essential resource for the greater Rochester and providing quality housing opportunities and services. Established in 1955, so we've been around a little while. We do administer two main HUD programs, first being public housing with about 2,400 units, all within the city of Rochester, ranging from high-rises to single-family homes. Our Section 8 program has over 9,700 vouchers, and combined we serve over 12,000 low-income residents and participants in the 5-county greater Rochester area. That also equates to about 26,000 people. So we do touch quite a few people in our area. We're a high performer in our Section 8 program, and we're very proud of that as well. Leasing operations is also known as Section 8, is the department at the Housing Authority. Our staffing director, managers, inspection crew, housing specialists, clerks, they all work hard to provide our participants with the resources they need to find quality housing. We're also, some of the latest updates to our Section 8 programs is the city ordinance, okay, that prohibits housing discrimination on the basis of the source of income. So some sources of income, Section 8, unemployment, Social Security, disability, DHS, again, great thing for our city. It's a statewide initiative to have this as a state law as well. Some of our programs in leasing operations, the Housing Choice Voucher, it's also Section 8, project-based vouchers, permanent supportive housing, Veterans Affairs, which is VASH, Mainstream, and also our home ownership program. Our home ownership program is where participants can use their Section 8 voucher to offset their mortgage to own a home. Great program. We're very proud of that as well. Our Housing Choice Voucher, again, this assistance is tenant-based, which means their families can live in any qualifying rental unit of their choice within our jurisdiction, or they can move to another jurisdiction anywhere in the country. They pay 30% of their income, and right now we have about 6,400 participants in that program. Now the project-based voucher program is a little different. The voucher is attached to the unit. However, after 1 year of participation, the family in that unit can move with a Housing Choice Voucher, again, anywhere in our jurisdiction or anywhere in the country, provided we have vouchers available at that time. Typically, we enter into what's called a HAP, a Housing Assistance Payment Contract. This is with the property owner, and with many of you, you have those contracts with us, and that's where we're paying that other portion of the rent. That's your contract with the Housing Authority. And in our PBV program, we have about a little over 2,400 participants. 64 contracts have been executed with local owners and developers in the housing projects in our area. Waiting list, that's always a popular topic. Section 8 waiting list is currently closed. We're serving only those on the list. However, project-based voucher waiting lists are open many times at various complexes where the project-based vouchers are. And the complete list is available on our website. Some of the eligibility criteria for participants in our program: must be income eligible, pass criminal background checks, can't have any debts owed with any federal housing programs. Requirements for participants, they're required to report any income changes, also any household composition changes. They have to comply with their family obligations. And if they don't, we have to enforce that. Now, project-based vouchers. We have an RFP process, request for proposal. That whole outline of that is on our website. I'm going to highlight on some of the stuff. What we did this time around was establish a rolling RFP process that allows you to apply anytime throughout the year. We expanded it to not only just to a 1-year open rolling process, but a 2-year process. We have 200 vouchers set aside for this, and it's a great way to provide subsidies to your projects. Proposals must be for new construction or major rehab, and the rehab costs have to be at least $500,000 per unit to be considered. Again, on our website, you can find a lot more information on that. We also will have a table next door, and with staff there that can answer a ton of questions, and also materials to have there that you can take with you. You have some in your folders already. Eligible projects for the RFP process, you must be previously selected or awarded funding for housing assistance under a federal, state, or local government housing program, or a supportive services program that all have required competitive selection. Examples, low-income housing tax credits or home funds. Eligible projects must be selected for award within 3 years of the proposal, okay? Subject to a subsidy layering review. Located in our jurisdiction. We have a preference this year for awarded, that it is awarded for developments that are located within the city of Rochester. We also have a revitalization bonus as part of the scoring, and we'll give preference to developments in the designated City of Rochester focused investment strategy area. In your submissions, you must have 3 copies of each proposal, just housekeeping stuff, pretty much standard stuff. Must address all the criteria outlined in the RFP. That's very important. Double check that. Make sure you have tabs that are labeled. And what we do when we receive them is we have a team of RHA staff, and the proposals are ranked. They're graded. They're graded in accordance with the criteria, the scoring rubric that's listed in the RFP. So know what your points are. Okay, make sure you're hitting those points in that scoring rubric. Every project-based voucher applicant must demonstrate that their project satisfies the twin goals of deconcentrating poverty and expanding housing and economic opportunity. Those are 2 very important things. You want to make sure that your RFPs have that. Our awards will be contingent on the availability of our vouchers. Okay, we've got to have vouchers available before we're going to issue them. We've set aside 200 for this RFP process. I don't think they'll run out. Let's put it that way. Proposal must be consistent with the RFP requirements. Again, make sure you double check that. Compliance with all applicable HUD and RHA project-based voucher requirements prior and during the agreement to enter into a HAP contract, and then throughout the housing assistance payment contracts as well. And that gets monitored by our staff. So once we make a selection, we notify the owner within 10 days in writing, and even in those that aren't selected as well. Here's our contact information. Again, now that's on our website. You have them in your folders, and we'll have the table next door for any questions that you have. I'll be around as well. Feel free to pull me aside. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. So again, thank you for being here. We appreciate you and your business that you do with RHA. And I would like to hand the mic off to Commissioner Bey Muhammad.
Right, we are wrapping up. How's everybody doing? Good? I think you should be tired because when you receive knowledge, you get a little sleepy. Not because we were boring, but it's a lot to take on. Before we close out, we have 2 more partners here. Tricia Eastman, and she is the Senior Director of Housing Programs at the Housing Council, and Scott Oliver is the Deputy of Energy Programs at Papstone. They're going to speak for about 1 minute each, and then we're going to close out.
Good afternoon. My name is Tricia Eisman, and I'm from the Housing Council at Pathstone. So we have several resources at the Housing Council at Pathstone for landlords. Some of them being, we have a housing hotline. This is where you can call in and we answer landlord-tenant questions, as well as any housing-related issues as well. Then we have publications for landlords. We have free publications. Those are located on our website. You can also come into our office and access those. Those would be like leases. We have like non-payment notices. And then we also have paid publications as well. We also do rental registry. So this is where you can list your property with us, and then it's distributed throughout the community, and you can also access that on our website. And then we also do education. So we're training landlords. We have a 6-hour rental property class, operating rental property, and the next one is coming up in April. And this is where we're going over the A to Z's of being a landlord. So we're going over from tenant selection to leases to evictions. So if you're interested in learning more information about us, please, we'll be over in the next room at a table. So come visit us and you can find out what resources we do have available for you. Thank you, and I'm turning it over to Scott Oliver.
Thanks. So at Pathstone, we are, one small part of Pathstone, we are the community and energy engagement partner for NYSERDA. So we offer assistance to everyone in the Finger Lakes community to access energy efficiency programs. No matter what you have, it could be for homeowners, it could be for renters, 1 to 4 unit properties, 5 and above, small businesses, churches, we probably can find something to help you out. The great programs that we have, one of the most important ones is the Empower program we can help assist you with. It's based on the income of the bill payer, and with that program you can get free insulation and things like that for your units. Again, it's based on the income of the utility bill payer. So come on over to our tables, find out. And one last thing, why should you do energy efficiency for a rental unit if you're not paying the bills? Well, if your tenants have lower bills, they're going to be more likely to pay your rent. So make your buildings more energy efficient. Thank you.
Right. So I don't want everybody to forget, but if you look in your packet, there's a survey. We'd appreciate if you fill that out, and there'll be an area that you can drop these off. You can drop them off with any of the staff. In closing, I just want to say there was a lot received here, a lot of information. When you finish here, leave out the two double doors. You make a left, go into the next room. We'll have tables set up. You can have more of an intimate conversation, but please take advantage of this information and the people that are here. If you talk to Danny, he can get a little further in, programs we have for larger developments for low interest loans for your housing project. What Lenny talked about and Nick. And is Miriam here? Is she still in the room? Okay, but make sure you seek her out. She's here locally, boots on the ground, and she works for CPC. So a lot of information. Just don't let it go. It's here. We are accessible. I'd like to thank the mayor. Let's give her a round of applause for her leadership. And I'd like to thank our team here. So give them a round of applause. And yourself. So that is, thank you.